Welcome back, everyone. This is episode
18, everybody.
of the Movie Bros podcast. We are your hosts with the most. It's, of course, Duncan and Hayden. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. It is the podcast where we pick a movie, we watch a movie, we banter about the movie, we ramble about the movie, we beat it into the ground until there's nothing else to say, and there's awkward silences, and then we post it. That's the podcast. This is what you're here for.
This is what you know. This is what you love. You're here on purpose, hopefully. And if not,
Hopefully.
I hope you enjoyed either way.
If you need to find more about us, either previous episodes, what we're about to post, what's coming in the future, all that jazz, you can find us obviously on Spotify, where you found this podcast. You can also find us on Instagram. We are at the movie_bros. We post on there, we post on Spotify. You know the deal.
And if you don't know, now you do.
And this week, folks,
Yes, this fine film we are bringing for you this week is
this
The Meg.
cinema,
This complete work of artistic expression is going to be The Meg, the shark horror-ish kind of
not
movie.
horror.
It tries sometimes.
It's weird. It tries to be horror. It tries to be comedy. It tries to be like romance.
It tries to be a great many things and ends up
And
not
it's
doing any one of them well.
not any of them even remotely well. But I digress. Let's talk about those fast film facts first.
Well, our fast film facts for today are going to be that this was released in 2018. And for long-time listeners, all one or two of you, this is actually a return to a previous director. This is John Turteltaub, who's known for National Treasure 1 and 2, one of the first couple things we actually talked about on this show.
But what a change in like what he was like 20.
What a change in style and quality.
Everything.
Yes. It is confusing to me why he's attached to this. You would think of someone who can point to things like, oh, I made National Treasure 1 and 2. I made Sorcerer's Apprentice. You would think he would be able to attach himself to better projects.
Sure.
Regardless, this is written by Dean Georgaris, who I'm sure I'm mispronouncing.
Dean, my God.
It looks Italian, man. I don't know. It stars Jason Statham, Rainn Wilson, Ruby Rose, Bing Bing Lee, and Jessica
boy.
McNamee.
I'm thinking back of these characters that oof.
Oh, you'll love them so much. They're all so good and compelling
and clearly not like the token character of each type.
No, definitely not. We wouldn't do tokenism for the sake of having them on screen here. No, definitely not this movie. To the shock of no one, this won no awards. For some other reason, it also
made a shit
has
ton
a
of money.
Sequel, which was out a couple years ago. Somehow,
didn't they both? I think they both made a shit ton of money, even though, like, again, they're terrible.
I never got around to watching the sequel. So, fun fact, back in the day, I watched this in theaters with a couple friends because those are friends who I enjoy watching crappy movies with, and boy, did that fit the bill. I would also go on to watch the ill-fated Taylor Swift live-action Cats movie from a few years ago as well.
Oof, that's a big oof, buddy.
Listen, I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. I admit that. That's fine. I'm okay with it. Even I would be like, this is just maybe one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like, it was irredeemably terrible.
Maybe a side ramble, but I mean, again, that's the whole point of the podcast. But do you care at all about her whole the football guy and her? Does that who gives a shit?
Her and Travis Kelce?
Yeah, who cares? Literally, who cares?
I feel sorry for the guy because he's going to be the next in the long list of ex-boyfriends because that's her whole thing. But other than that, I can't bring myself to care. In my defense, though, I've never cared that much about her personal life. I'm more just a fan of her music.
I'm here for the music, man.
Well, I am. I don't care about Taylor Swift.
All right, okay, all right.
She's a billionaire who owns more jets than I know people personally. Like, it's not.
Did you see the movie?
I did not see the Eras Tour movie because I went to the Eras Tour in person.
I would have figured you probably would have done both because yes, you like her, but also you like movies. I don't know. It just seemed like that's kind of
Um,
perfectly up your alley.
so it is, and I have actually gone back and forth on, do I want to actually find a way to watch that because I do love her music. I did go in person to the Eras tour, and it was incredible, and I loved it. But part of that is if I already had such a good experience with this, do I need to see the Disney approved product release version of what I already enjoy?
It wasn't by
It's
Disney, was it?
it's only available on Disney Plus right now.
Really?
So I
I
have
would.
to
Huh.
assume I have to assume they had a hand in it. Either that or they just bought the rights. So you're right, that is up my alley. I just haven't gotten around to watching it.
All right. All right.
So from one disastrous movie to another, let's circle back around to the Meg. I'm actually kind of done with my fast facts. To the shock of probably no one, this didn't prompt my interest enough to look up a whole bunch of ton of information about it. So to start off the swimming puns, let's dive on in to our
And
topics here.
drown in just not even mediocrity. Yeah.
Dive on in, drown in mediocrity. Let's go.
I would say starting off. Granted, I think it's just he's been Jason Statham for so long that I can't not see him as just Jason Statham.
I've
But
never seen him in a
also,
movie and have him not play a Jason Statham character. It
exactly,
is
exactly. I mean, there's many people like that, like
kind of like
um,
Gerard Butler.
Gerard Butler. I mean, Ryan Reynolds plays the same Ryan Reynolds character in every movie.
That's
It's
very true.
fine. Um, but I also find it's his accent that really took me out of it, especially in the beginning.
Why so?
It's just so ridiculous, and for a movie that I can't I the whole movie, I couldn't really tell if they were leaning into it being ridiculous or not.
It is
I don't know.
so. Last week we talked about three billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, which also had a tone that would fluctuate and be different things at different times. In a weird way, this kind of has the same issue to where it never wants to pin down and choose what kind of movie it actually is. We did kind of joke about it as we opened the episode, but like it never fully commits to being a scary large shark movie. It never really commits to being a comedy about being a bad movie. It never commits to being a love story between Jason Statham's character and the Asian woman's whose name I don't remember. It's
I mean, I could give you a name, it just would be extremely wrong and racist.
I'm sorry.
Never mind. Never mind. Keep going.
It'll be cut out. It's fine. It never fully commits to any one aspect of the movie, and as a result, at least in my opinion, so much of this comes across as half effort.
Oh, even I would be shocked and if they even gave half effort. Like it doesn't feel like half effort, Hayden. It feels like a third or a fourth effort.
I don't know. It just for how many different things they could have done with this premise, they chose not to do any of them well. It is kind of disappointing as a fan of bad movies. I want bad movies that succeed in being bad. This is just kind of forgettable in a way.
And granted, it is definitely forgettable, but I just googled what else came out in 2018. Like for being compared to so many other pretty good movies came out in 2018.
Well, give me a list.
Obviously, some of these are more my thing or more your thing or just
That's
whatever. But
okay.
like First Man came out then. Did you ever see High Life with Robert Pattinson?
Oh, that's yeah,
Uh,
that's a good movie.
Sorry to Bother You came out that year. Infinity
Right.
War.
Uh, pff,
Um,
Small movies, yeah.
or Outlaw King. Did you ever see that? I feel like not a lot of people knew
Oh,
about
with
that.
Chris Pine, where you can see his
Yes.
sausage.
I mean, Chris Pine hanging dong is kind of all I need in a movie. Just saying. Solo came out in 2018.
Again, I know
Um,
that didn't go over well with a whole lot of
I
people. I
loved it.
really enjoy it. I
Yeah,
really like it a lot. It did not do the numbers Disney wanted, unfortunately, and as such, we'll probably never get another one.
sure. I mean, like A Star Is Born, like Ready Player One. There was a lot of movies that came out.
It was a big year for movies, and this was not one of them.
That's really what I'm trying to get at. Is like for a year that was widely a pretty good year for movies. This just was not. It felt like a straight to DVD kind of movie.
I feel like if we weren't in the quote unquote streaming age, it probably would have been.
Mm-hmm. All right. Should we get into this, Hayden? Should I start picking it apart?
Yeah, let's I can't even think of a bad pun for this. Let's just get started. So something I will say before we lead into pretty much the whole discussion here is that Duncan is
Hello,
is a
hello. That's me. Hello, yes. Hi, hello.
yes,
Hello,
he's
hello, yes, hello.
brother.
Hello, hello, yes, yeah.
Duncan is a
Hi,
diver
hello,
in
hello,
real
yes, yeah.
life. Bro, I'm gonna mute you when I edit this.
All right,
So
all right.
Duncan is a diver in real life. He does work at a movie theater, but he for a very
For
long time
yes.
was a dive master, a dive instructor. I will constantly see pictures from him on his days off. He'll go out to the surrounding Seattle area and do dives out there on his own time. And so a lot of my questions to him from when we do this record that I didn't ask on the day when we watched this is, please give me your rundown of all of the inaccurate, crappy logic that this employs that is just completely wrong.
And I will say there's a couple things that I'm going to talk about, and I think there's obviously a lot more that I could have that I kind of gave up at some point watching this. And there are also a few things that while I do have, I'm not an expert or anything, but I do have a fair amount of experience. But there's a lot of things with submersibles that they use in this that I don't know the physics behind.
Trust me, the shark tends to change in size depending on what the shot calls for. Physics have left the building.
With that being said, the first scene where he's on the bottom of the seafloor, like super super deep, I think they're in the Marianas Trench. I think that's their reference. Um, and he's rescuing people from a sub that's like imploding, basically.
Um, it's not the Marianas Trench. I think that's the sequel. They're at some equally large depth in
Either way,
China. Yes.
we literally saw this in the news this last year when that submersible went missing. Like the
I
exact
have the
same.
same thing written down.
I the first thing I wrote I said quote would implode immediately. Yeah, these things were like, oh, he's got a little leak and there's water coming in. No, no, no. This would have been like in a second. The entire thing would have been crushed like a can. They'd all would have been dead. Just saying.
Well, just like how Jason Statham immediately just plummets straight to the bottom in his ship, and
Oh, you're jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead.
you know what? I'm sorry. Back to you, please.
From there, I then said the color grading in this movie was kind of odd. Like there are parts where they really pumped up the yellows when they were supposed to be, I think, in like Tokyo or Shanghai or something like that. And then there are parts where they really killed that and like pumped the blues, but it never felt consistent and it never felt artistic. It felt like, oh,
Yeah,
these are the colors of this area, so we're just gonna give them more of that. I don't know. Also, Rainn Wilson, speaking just about like other actors just playing themselves, I feel like he just played Rainn Wilson. Although him as like a like kind of I don't know how to explain his like billionaire attitude because it wasn't like totally normal cocky asshole billionaire, but like not that way.
honestly, I mean, if there's anything to enjoy in this movie, I think it's to laugh at his character because he's essentially playing an Elon Musk character.
Yeah, without being like super super on the nose on it, he is more or less playing that. Yes.
Yes. I so the thing I've written down here is he plays a believable idiot billionaire, and that's really ironic with the recent submarine fiasco.
Also, why does again I the whatever the wife the love interest the chick I don't know her name.
The blonde one or the Asian one?
No, the Asian one. No one cares about his wife or
Oh,
ex-wife or
okay,
whatever.
so not his ex-wife, the female character with the kid.
Yes. Why does her face look like she's AI? Like she's not real?
So
I don't know if it's like makeup or airbrushing, like touch-ups and posts or something, but like she doesn't look like a real person.
so it's a bit of both. She has so much like foundation on, and
Is that it?
so that
As
her
someone who has, again, I don't have any experience with those kinds of things. It looks like I look at it and I'm like, "Oh, this is something does not like, my brain says this isn't correct."
so I don't have any experience in this either, but what I would assume based on what I learned from ex-girlfriends or whatever is that she has so much foundation on it, it's making her entire face all one skin tone, so where it comes across looking like plastic. And then when they went through in post, they smoothed out her features even
Mm.
more, and it does make her look slightly alien.
And then there's the flip side of that where Jet, I think is what they called Ruby Rose's person.
Oh, with the worst hair ever.
The worst hair I've ever seen, maybe ever.
I don't even know how to describe it other than like she looks like a Sonic character made human.
Well, no, do you remember that roller skating graffiti Xbox game?
Oh, Jet Set Radio Future. That's a great
She
game.
a great game, but she looks like a character from that. That's what she looks like.
That is an insult to that game, but I can see what you mean.
Also fair.
I do like how this takes place like the movie takes place over like a number of days, and Jason Statham never needs to shave. I don't think I've ever seen him like
Well, he always has the
completely clean
same.
shaven. He has like perma-stubble.
He does have perma-stubble. Uh, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen him with a beard. I don't think I've ever seen him clean shave. He might have been more clean shaven in Snatch, I think, or
Maybe
maybe
so, but that when he was
Lock, Stock,
that's when
and
he was much younger.
well, yeah, he's in his 20s now. He's in his 50s, I think.
So actually something I've written down here is that he is jacked and he's like 60 years old.
Well, I
Like,
think he's less. I think he's less jacked, and he's more just. He has no body fat.
well, potato, 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 tomato. It is kind of the same in my eyes. He just. I'm just saying, like they have the obligatory scene where he has his shirt off and he's
Of course.
talking to the love interest, and then in an embarrassing way. But like he looks great. Like he is in great shape for being as old as he is.
And then there's the black guy with the classic like leather golf hat on. I feel like
I
that's just like
mean, maybe the worst tokenism in the whole movie. I mean, he even starts to
yes,
beatbox and rap towards
yes,
the end
yes,
for no reason whatsoever.
yes. Again,
It's
well,
it
between
was almost racist.
him, Ruby Rose, then the like overweight, large white guy in the sub, then Hero from Heroes as the like token Asian guy.
Yeah, but see, he's in there as a cameo. I don't
It's
know if I even
it's
count
more
that.
than a cameo, but it's not like I don't know.
It's more than a cameo, but it's less than a full role.
And it's weird. I also wrote this like, what was the CGI budget for this? Because parts of this look still better than things like The Flash, but there are also parts that I'm like, were you just like, oh, well, this is fine, and we'll come back to it, and just never came back to it?
Yeah, again, so much about this movie is inconsistency, and again, this is also it's really inconsistent. Like there are shots where they are first diving into the trench area, and you got all this, cool like air vents going on, and you have
Mm-hmm.
some
Mm-hmm.
bioluminescent fish, and that looks really nice. And then you just have other shots where it's just a shark swimming through the water, and it looks like a video game from the PS2. It's all over the place with quality, and it never looks finished.
Mm-hmm. Uh,
And one thing I've written down about the design of the shark is that the design of the shark, I think, is boring. I feel like they could have done so much more with that because the whole story behind it is that, oh, it's an ancient dinosaur species. It's lived in an isolated environment underneath like this nitrogen layer, and we've never seen it before. Like, you could have done so many more interesting things with that. You could have given it like like bony spikes on it, or given it ridges,
something,
or like
something
done anything else other than just take a 3D model of a great white shark and make it big.
with some scarring on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a missed opportunity for, if we are calling this a pseudo monster movie, for your monster to be memorable in any way, shape, or form.
And piggybacking on that, the whole layer that it's trapped underneath. I've been through layers like that. When I was
Oh,
diving
really?
in when I was diving in Mexico in cenotes, which is basically like baby caves where you can still see the light. I've gone underneath sulfuric acid, not sulfuric acid, sulfur. I can never remember the exact terminology. Either way, I've gone through layers like that where it's both temperature and light is way different from top to bottom. But like, there is no way that would just keep out a shark. No matter, like, it's not, that just wouldn't do anything. Again, that's with my limited knowledge and experience, and I don't know sharks that well. But what I do know is the amount of signal needed from the surface to how far down, like, they are, like, they talk about the distance, and you don't really realize how far down that really is. But the amount of signal needed to man the rover from the
No,
surface, insane. That could be
no,
like,
we have magic Bluetooth, don't you know?
well, no, I'm just saying, like, also their Bluetooths look terrible that they have like wrapped around. If you look at the Bluetooths themselves, they look like Chotsky, like they got this off, like they look like dollar store Bluetooths.
They have like chunky earphone pieces in, and they all look like
Yes,
they were made on the day from like
yes,
Goodwill
yes.
products. They all look horrible.
Also, so here's the actual where the physics come in. At every 33 feet, only 33 feet, the water pressure doubles. So let's say at the surface, it takes you a minute to breathe uh, the air in a tank. At 33 feet, it's going to take you 30 seconds. At 66, it's going to take you 15 seconds, and so on. So keep that in mind, and then think of how deep they are. They don't have continuous air supply to the surface, right? So they do reference, and I caught this because I wrote it down later. Um, they reference oxygen tanks, so there is a set amount of supply. Just the amount of air they would have to bring down there, even with what's called rebreathers, which is recycling your oxygen with the air you breathe out to create more air, for lack of a better word. It's again just not possible. And when they say, "Oh, I think they've got 18 hours of air left," the amount of times where I wanted to just like rub my forehead during this.
Wouldn't that be like a huge amount of tanks of air? Like that's
Well, a huge amount of tanks, but B, keep in mind they're also not only breathing like in a tiny little mass that they have to fill the air with. Like this, it's this massive compartment that they are constantly having to fill with air. And yes, they have similar things on like the space station, but
yeah.
keep in mind how big that, like, something like that is. Whereas this tiny little like submersible, or even the ones that like Jason Statham or the Asian chick take down to rescue with them with, those have even less. Like, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. And when Jason Statham and that chick take those little gliders, I think is what they call them, down to rescue them, he's, and they kind of reference this, but that he's dropping so fast that I mean, he would have been dead long before he got to them, because he's descending at a rate where he wouldn't be able to equalize pressure in his ears. Basically, he would be like, his eardrums would rupture. He'd have blood coming out of his ears, out of his nose, out of his mouth, out of his eyes. Yeah, and then when he blows the, what's her name, the Asian love interest back to the surface with like pontoons or whatever, when he's like, "Oh, I've got this," and he sends her back up, she's flying to the surface with those
Oh yeah.
pontoons, which means she's also getting decompression sickness, which means basically too much. She's going too fast to where her blood cannot dissipate the nitrogen that's in there fast enough, because there is a rate of exchange. That's why we as divers go up slowly. So she's going to get what's called the bends. Basically, air bubbles are going to be in places that they really shouldn't be. This is something that can mess with like brain connections. It can mess with mobility. Like, people like lose the use of limbs with it. Like, there's tons of things that can go wrong with this. It's like the big thing of it diving. What else? I gotta catch my breath.
Hey, no, this is good. This is good. This is good.
No one cares about the daughter. The whole like sub story about, no one gives a dude. No one gives a flying fuck about this little kid and her light up shoes and
That is funny, yes.
her like robotic hamster wheel thing that's rolling around. No one gives a shit.
Yeah, I do have to wonder why she's there at all.
Yeah, like, I mean,
Like
she's not
I know
really needed.
from like a movie making perspective why she's there, because you want to have a kid character to try and drum up sympathy from someone. But like
Uh,
Everyone on this like floating research center that they're taking place on, at least partially, are super uber rich. Like you're saying she couldn't pay for like a babysitter for her
right?
daycare or
Or but
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, an au pair, like a nanny or something to just stay with her. Either way.
It's incredibly contrived that she's there at all. It is very odd. So maybe this is something you can answer for me, although you have also mentioned you're not a shark expert. Would flashing lights at a shark be enough to like get its attention? Because there
Uh,
are because there's
okay.
moments where like he's trying to rescue them and
Yes,
they're
yes,
on the
yes,
bottom of
I
the
know.
floor and he has to like
Yes.
break them off their tail and
Sure.
shoot like underwater flares or whatever at him so he can distract it long enough. Would that have like even for like normal sharks that actually exist, would that have done anything?
I would say potentially there are certain I mean, there's not enough research that has gone into sharks. That's part of one of my jobs right now is working at the zoo, and a lot of it is just explaining to the public, like, "Hey, we have some research that we've done. This is what we know about sharks, and there's a lot more that we just don't know about." So one of the sort of myths, sort of fact, it hasn't really been like explored enough is both light and color can really affect sharks. So that's why a lot of dive places will not allow you to wear bright light colors on a
Hmm,
shark dive because that's apparently too enticing. Like
interesting.
I wear a lot of white underwater. That's kind of my thing. It's how I can pick up my gear. I cannot wear my gear on those dives. Like I have to wear specifically like dark muted colors. So
I mean, I
maybe
don't
lights.
wanna say that those scientists are wrong, but do sharks tend to eat brightly colored food? When I think of what sharks eat, they're like sea animals. They're all gray or brown or blue. Like I can't imagine.
I think it's because it's just something bright and at least it can catch their eye and it's interesting.
Hmm.
Um, but again, I am not the authority, and neither is this movie
I feel like you're more of an authority than this movie.
on some of the stuff. I don't want to speak out of turn though. There is something at least that I like that they do reference shark fin soup, which is actually like a big deal to at least
Yes.
even if I think it was just in passing. I don't really remember, but that's kind of a good thing. Although I then followed that with just rap question mark because the black guy just starts trying to rap or something.
Yeah. So so at one point they actually leave high tech floating station. I don't remember why. I
Mhm.
don't believe it was a good reason. But they're on a boat and they come across a bunch of other like smaller normal sharks dead floating in the water with their fins off, and one of
Mm,
the
mhm.
characters like,
Oh, it's
oh, you know,
payback
all
or
this,
whatever, yeah.
it's like all this for like a bowl of soup, and that's what they're mentioning.
Yes. Yes, which, it's a good thing to talk about.
Yeah.
The doctor, the one who, like, Jason
Oh,
Statham has
the
issues with.
see, I thought you meant the possibly Indian guy.
What? Oh,
Remember that guy?
I know who you're talking about, but no, what I'm saying is the doctor's death, it felt like it was just trying to be this, like, "Oh, he's sacrificing himself for Ruby Rose," even though she just sat there in the water and watched him die. She didn't even, like
Oh, I had forgotten how completely pointless that scene was. That
it's totally
blew my
pointless.
mind.
Well,
Like, okay,
I wrote down doctor's death was not paid for, like, there was no point to it,
so they're both in the water. They're trying to swim back to the boat, and he's further back than she is.
and it's
So
clear that,
his
like, they're both not gonna make it.
I don't remember if she makes it or not.
She makes it, and then I think she doesn't make it later on. Dude, I've already blocked out a good portion of this movie.
It was not good. Like, not even in a this is so bad it's fun kind of way. This was just stupid. But like, so his whole idea to try to distract the shark was to splash around and make a bunch of, commotion, which okay, I
Which
can
that
kind of
would
get that
work.
logic.
That would work.
But
That
like,
would be a thing.
she doesn't even start swimming when he does this. Like,
Yeah, she
she
just
just
sits
sits
there like,
there
"What the
and
fuck, dude?"
watches him die for no reason. It reminded me of the Kong Skull Island movie. There's a bit where
Oh, I know what you're talking about, where he
like
pulls a
they're
grenade.
yeah. So
Yes.
they're the main
Yes, I
characters are being chased by, I don't even remember what they're called, but like
Skull
big
something?
big lizard things. And
Yes.
one of the last remaining army guys decides to try and sacrifice himself, thinking that he can buy them time. So he takes two grenades out of his jacket, pulls the pin, and starts walking towards the oncoming monsters, thinking, "Oh, they'll eat me and then they'll explode, and my friends
Get away. Yeah.
can get away." And the monster completely ignores him, hits him with its tail, and throws him into like a cliffside a few 100 feet away, and he explodes pretty much off screen. It was a completely useless death, and in the same way that it's a useless death here, except that movie's good.
I agree. And then immediately wrote after this, I wrote, the human stories don't matter because they're not good. But that's the problem because there's other movies like Kong Skull Island or even King Kong, the one with Jack Black, where
Well, that's a great
the
movie.
it's a great movie, but like the monster stuff is good, but it's also good because the equally important human side of it, which the audience can actually relate to, is also compelling. And just none of the human stories in this are either compelling or relatable. The acting is not good, the writing's not good. It just doesn't matter.
So I kind of expected that going into this. I mean, even
Sure, which
even
I
even for
get it.
like a first time when I watched this in theaters, I kind of expected the human side to be underdeveloped because I assumed, okay, I'm gonna watch a big shark monster movie. They're not gonna focus on telling compelling human stories. They're gonna focus on the shark and the monster, and they don't even do that. It's just like
Yeah, there
I
is
don't
there
understand.
is some shark, but not enough shark.
There
And not
is
enough
some
like
shark, but it doesn't ever feel like it's done well.
that's what I'm
You
saying. Like
know,
there's some shark, but there's not enough like good shark.
I just my main takeaway from this is, where did the budget go? Because I don't see it evident anywhere.
Probably right into Jason Statham's pocket, dude.
I mean, maybe I even as a fan of like I feel like I've said this line already, but even as a fan of like silly monster movies, I was expecting so much more out of this.
Have you this is maybe a side tangent, but Rainn Wilson, obviously he's done a lot of these kind of like not for lack of a better word, like fun movies for him that probably he doesn't really need to do since he did The Office. But have you seen Shimmer Lake?
Shimmer Lake?
I would highly recommend it. It's a it's not a short, it's still like it's like an hour and 10 minutes or something like that. Um, it's him and I think Eric Bana,
I'm
and
googling it as we speak.
it's good. I was surprised on how good it was.
Huh.
So I totally tangent, but like I would if you can find that somewhere, I would watch it.
Says it's a neo-noir crime film told
Yes.
in reverse.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, there's a crime and there's some murder, and they tell it in reverse from different points of view. But it's like how you like was it 1917 or one of the movies recently where you're like, "Oh, I'm glad that you don't trust the narrator."
Oh yeah, yeah. I do like unreliable narrator as a trope.
Yes.
Well,
So,
I'll
I
look
would check
around
that
and
out.
see if I can find it because I did see the cast. And there was some people I recognized outside of him. I feel like Rainn Wilson doesn't do a whole lot of movies.
No, he does. And granted again,
Granted,
he
because he
doesn't
doesn't
need
have
to.
to.
I
Because
mean, if you look at the cast of The Office, the only people who really do anything is
Steve
what's his
Carell,
name? Well, no, Steve, yeah, Steve Carell, but also uh main
Jim.
guy, Jim, John Krasinski.
Yes, but well,
No one else really does
he
anything.
does stuff behind the camera these days. He doesn't really act anymore.
That's true. I mean, no, but looking back, he did quite a number of movies. I mean, he did.
He did a lot of Jack Ryan.
Yes, he did do Jack Ryan. He did Leatherheads. He did a couple, which actually really. I'm surprised that I like that as much as I did.
Yeah, Leatherheads
It's
is fun.
yeah. It's again. It's a fun movie.
I feel
I
like
think
that
he did.
flew under the radar for the time it was out.
Yes, I think so too. I mean, yeah, but why wouldn't you go like leave the office for a little bit and go do a movie with George Clooney? Heck yeah.
Sure.
Coming back to the Meg, the next thing I have again, this is a quote from the movie. This is something
Oh
that someone was
God,
paid to write.
I'm bracing myself.
Maybe we have a plan. There's a point where we're on the boat and they're like, "Oh, do we have a plan?" There's no plan, and then Jason Statham is like, "Maybe we got a plan." I'm like, "This is absolutely terrible." Cool.
Would you say that's better or worse than somehow
Somehow
Palpatine
Palpatine
return?
returns.
Like that
I don't
is
know. That's
that
pretty
is
bad.
truly awful.
That's pretty bad. But then it's followed by The scene where they're in like the sea of tourists in the water with the shark, where there's
Oh
like a billion
gosh.
people. Do you know what I'm about to say?
I do, yeah.
Oh my god.
Okay, so what we're referencing is that there is a crowd shot to where they have an extra. I don't know why they did this. They have an extra who's clearly Chinese say the
Like he,
line "Oh my god" into the screen, and you can tell that he doesn't speak English and he's just saying it phonetically because he
yes.
says it exactly the way Duncan just said it,
Oh
and
my god.
it we both had to pause it. We were laughing at it while we were watching this.
Well, I
Like,
wrote it down. I also wrote it down phonetically. It's like, oh my, but then I said God, like GAWD.
see, I would have written that GAUHD.
God? Oh, yeah, that's true. That's a good one too.
Regardless, it is so
It's
bad that
fantastic.
that is what we remember the most about this movie. That
Honestly,
line is
that
what
might
stick with us the
be
most.
that and like all the different things that they did wrong, but like that might be the thing that sticks with me for the movie, for sure.
Like it that's so underwhelming. And like so my last thing I've written down here is that we've done a run of things that are cinematography wise uninteresting. I think this one was like actually bad. Like there are there are times when things like Rango and things like Three Billboards were, yeah, it's adequate. It's okay. There are shots in this that are actually like they need to take a second pass at this and
Yes.
reblock this scene. Like there
Yes.
are so many things that take place underwater that just look bad.
Oh, I definitely agree. Speaking of underwater, there's two different spots in this where I'm like, okay, hold up. If I was like a real person watching this as a documentary, yes, obviously a crazy huge shark and all that, but there's two inventions that I'd be like, hold up, can we go back and look at that again? Like, what the fuck? Why are you glossing over this? One of those is being, yes, they surface to like thousands of feet deep, signal to be able to control a rover. The second one is at the very end. Do you have any guesses, Hayden? I don't know if you remember, but Jason
I
Statham
don't.
Jason Statham and the lead Asian chick actress are underwater and they put something in their mouth.
Oh, they have Star Wars rebreathers. Yes.
Yes, I wrote Phantom Menace regulator, quote unquote.
Yeah.
What the heck is that? Again, that's not a real thing. Like that kind of tech that's crazy tech. That's just
That would
not a thing.
just be able to just suck breathable oxygen out of the surrounding water. Yeah.
Yeah, that that's where I'm like, oh, if I saw that, I'd be like, why are we not putting funding into whatever the fuck that is? What?
I so kind of on a tangent from Star Wars here. I did like the design of their like little yellow speeder thing that she drives around in at the end where
Mm-hmm.
it kind of looks like
It
the
did
speeders
kind
that they
of.
drive around in the opening of episode 2.
Yes.
Like it I thought that was very cool looking. Granted everything surrounding it was stupid, but I thought the design of the ship at least was cool.
Yes, that's just something that I caught up. But yes, I felt the like Star Warsy reference too, for sure.
Yeah. So that is kind of at the end of my paragraphs of this. I feel like kind of intentionally we're going to have more of you pointing out the flaws in this rather than
Sure.
me, which is fine and that's kind of what I wanted to have happen.
Yeah, I feel like we could have. I mean, that's like a whole subset of movies of all the like not accurate ocean stuff. I don't know.
I mean, a lot of them are going to be James Bond movies with Roger Moore.
I will say though, it's one of those like it's so bad it's good. But Into the Blue, all the diving in is incredibly unrealistic, but the movie itself is fantastic. I highly
That
recommend
movie is
that if you don't
crap. What are
know
you
it.
talking about?
No, 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 no. Paul Walker, Jessica Alba, Josh Brolin is the bad guy.
I
Dude, it's
know.
actually and it's set in Belize or the Bahamas or something like that. It's
It's
fantastic.
so bad. It's
I think that
that's up there with like the Kate Hudson Matthew McConaughey movie called Fool's Gold.
which I know of, but I haven't seen. But if you
It
watched,
is also atrocious.
I'm just saying, if you watch The Meg and you want something that's actually better, but still diving themed, for lack of a better word, that's what I would recommend.
Actually, that's kind of a good question. What other diving movies are there out there?
I mean, there's 2 different 47 meters down. Um, there's
Oh, yeah,
several
yeah.
there's several movies that, like, reference diving very lightly, but there's not a ton of, like, diving specific movies. Obviously, there's 20,000 Leagues Underneath the Sea. They use diving a little bit on Mysterious Island.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, granted, it's been a long time, but so this yeah,
Well, I
it's
guess
something that's used a
it
little
it
bit
it
in a lot
also
of
turns
places,
up
but
in things like, a few of the Mission Impossibles, they have,
oh,
Tom Cruise underwater.
yeah, or like the first bit of The Italian Job where they're on rebreathers, in
Oh, and then
Venice.
there's All of the Abyss.
All of the Abyss, which I could maybe we add that to the ticker because I don't remember
Absolutely.
almost anything about that.
I remember really, really enjoying it, but I would absolutely love to rewatch it again. It's
Okay,
a
we
good,
can add that.
it's a good classic James Cameron movie.
Although I've heard maybe this is something we talked about during that episode, but I've heard that a lot of people did not like working on it with him.
That is a common theme of James Cameron, is that he has a bit of a god complex, which at this point, I kinda get it,
Yeah,
but,
I
like,
kinda get it.
yes, people don't really like working with James Cameron in the same way that people don't really like working with, Ridley Scott. Like, people want to because he turns out good stuff sometimes, but he's apparently not a nice boss.
I feel like they are 2 sides of the same coin, like, I feel like they are from the same generation of, like, filmmakers. They kinda go hand in hand for me, at least.
Yeah, well, they also made projects twice within the same series.
Oh, yeah, they both did, Alien, and they both did wait, what else
Terminator.
besides Alien? Oh, wait,
So, the first
Cameron did number
Terminator is
1?
a the first Terminator is a Ridley Scott movie, and the
No,
second
it's not, it's a
Terminator.
Cameron, isn't it? Isn't the first one James Cameron? I thought
No,
the
no, no, no,
first
no.
one
The
was
first one's Ridley Scott, and then the second one's James Cameron with the, liquid metal guy.
huh, I thought it was the other way around.
Maybe it is, but
Okay.
I feel like the second one being slightly more comedic is definitely
Yeah,
more of a
that's not
James Cameron thing.
that's more James Cameron.
Well, I feel like we've beaten this fish carcass to a pulp here. Is there anything else you want to add into the? I can't think of any more fish puns. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
What would you rate this out of 5 fish, half fish included?
Oh, this is two oh my gods out of 10.
Yeah, I don't
Or
let me
actually, no,
look
I'm
at
sorry. This is 2 out of 5. We don't do out of 10 here.
I gave this 1.5 out of 5.
I would say the reason it gets 2 for me is that sometimes the design elements are interesting, and the early shots where they are at like the bottom of the floor and you have the bioluminescent fish and things like that are fleeting, but at least they look decent. Everything else is crap.
Sure, and I think I gave it even at 1.5 this instead of even less is because of some of the fun comedic moments, like,
Even if unintentionally.
"Oh my god." Uh, yeah, I think that's all I need to say about that.
And to find out what we're talking about next week, Duncan's gonna bring up the randomizing picker wheel to tell us what it is we're gonna be enjoying next time.
The wacky wheel, the picker wheel, folks. Alright, it is spinning. I don't know if you can hear that insanely loud, like, ticking noise, but it's definitely spinning. Well, okay, so we just did, The Meg, right?
Yeah.
Do you wanna do another cinematic masterpiece?
What did it give us?
Madam Web?
Um, I want to restrict cinematic pain to a minimum. So why don't we do that? But let's find a buffer movie in between.
I agree, I would like to do it because I think it'd be a lot of fun, actually.
Seeing as we're both comic fans, and that's gonna be easy to make fun of.
Oh, Hayden, I've seen it. It's really, really bad.
I've seen bits
Uh,
and pieces. It looks terrible. So what is the buffer movie it gives us?
1 second. Okay. So it selected The Iron Claw, which is on HBO Max. I think this would be a good choice.
Okay, I mean that is That is definitely gonna be a departure from the laughably terrible.
I've seen this. You
Uh,
haven't seen this. Yeah, we'll have to get into it, but I'm excited. I think it's gonna be good.
look forward next week to the Iron Claw, and, make sure to give us a follow, give us a like, hit that bell, and tell your friends about us. If you've enjoyed this, make sure to find us on Instagram as well as at the or I'm sorry, Duncan, this is your corner. What's our Instagram handle?
What I'll take this. I'll take this. Cut that. Cut
Okay,
that. Cut
okay.
that.
Cut
Uh,
that, cut that, cut that.
well, folks, if yeah, exactly. If you enjoyed this episode, you can check us out on Instagram at @themovie_bros. You can also find us obviously on Spotify, which you're listening to. And if you like this one and you haven't listened to any of the other episodes, well, go backwards in time. Check it out. There's some that are longer, some that are shorter, some are a little nerdy, some are a little not so nerdy.
What is your, companion episode called? Or, what is
Well,
your companion podcast called?
my companion podcast is called Dunk's Movie Corner. It's just what I do a quick again, some episodes are like 12 minutes. It's just a quick little blurb of what I watched that week in movies. A lot of times including the movies that Hayden and I watch for this podcast. And I post that every week or so on, I believe it's Mondays or Tuesdays. So if you want to check that out, that's also on Spotify. It's also on Instagram at Dunk's Movie Corner Pod. And just as a reminder, for what you have to look forward to next week again is the Iron Claw. If you want to watch along with us, I believe you can find it on HBO Max. And the week after that, if you want to get a head start, we'll be covering Madam Web, which is on Netflix.
And, while I personally don't have a, Spotify podcast to plug, I'm actually gonna go ahead and plug my art
Yeah,
Instagram page, which is gonna
do
be
it.
Hayden Scott Artwork, no caps, no spaces. I do lots of sci-fi fantasy stuff in my spare time as a hobby. If you're interested in checking that out, I would appreciate that as well.
So check that out if you like, because why the heck not? And thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next week.